Besties, listen closely because what I'm about to break down is one of the most shocking twists yet in the Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds saga, and it is spiraling faster than anyone expected. Insiders are calling it a full crash out behind the scenes. Sources are whispering that the situation has reached a point of no return, and the sealed evidence about to hit the public could change everything forever. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear will leave you stunned and questioning everything you thought you knew in the rising storm of Hollywood's most chaotic unraveling. The saga surrounding Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the rapidly escalating fallout has taken a turn so sharp and so jarring that even insiders who have witnessed some of the industry's most infamous meltdowns are whispering that this situation is unlike anything they have ever seen before. And as we peel back the layers of this growing disaster, it becomes painfully clear that what began as a quiet dispute behind the scenes has now exploded into a full-scale crisis, threatening reputations, careers, alliances, and the very image these celebrities spent years carefully crafting and polishing. And while many people on the outside still assume this is just another Hollywood disagreement, those who are actually watching it play out know that the underlying tension, the strategic leaks, the quiet legal maneuvers, and the increasingly desperate public posturing are symptoms of something far more serious brewing beneath the surface, something that has been simmering for months, maybe even years, and is only now beginning to boil over. And for those paying attention, it is not Blake who appears to be orchestrating this whirlwind, but Ryan, who seems to be maneuvering with urgency and precision, as though he believes the only way to survive the fallout is to control the narrative before the narrative turns uncontrollably against them. And what is truly fascinating and deeply unsettling about this situation is that the deeper you look, the more you realize that Blake may not even fully understand the scale of what is crashing down around her. Because while she has always been a public figure with charm, poise, and undeniable red carpet presence, her grasp of the high-level strategic decision-making unfolding in legal offices, PR war rooms, and private negotiations seems limited at best, according to several people who have interacted with the couple in the midst of this storm. And Ryan's behavior reflects something closer to a man scrambling to keep the structure from collapsing entirely, rather than someone navigating with clarity and confidence. And when you look at the way information has been trickling out from sources connected to both sides, it becomes clear that Ryan may be attempting to run interference, redirect attention, and preemptively shift blame in ways that raise even more questions about what exactly he is trying to prevent from coming to light. And as the whispers about sealed documents, possible text message disclosures, behind-the-scenes testimony, and private conversations continue to intensify, the tension within their camp appears to be skyrocketing with each passing day. And what makes this situation even more volatile is that the people once firmly in their corner are no longer aligned, because as soon as it became obvious that this story was not going away, the cracks in the foundation began to widen, and insiders who previously defended Blake and Ryan are now stepping back, distancing themselves, and quietly expressing concern about inconsistencies, holes in the narrative, and decisions that seem reactive rather than strategic, the kind of decisions you make when you are trying to outrun a consequence rather than confront it. And this is where things begin to get even more complicated, because in the middle of all this legal noise and PR chaos, there is a growing belief that some of the most damaging information has not even surfaced yet, meaning everything we are seeing right now, every extension request, every sealed filing, every panic shift in tone, may just be the early tremor before the real quick hits. And if that is true, if the whispers about what might be contained in certain communications are even half accurate, then the coming weeks could completely transform public perception and rewrite the entire understanding of how this situation spiraled into its current state. And you can feel that pressure building in the way insiders are speaking, in the hesitation in their voices, and the way every new piece of information seems to point to the same conclusion: that this is not just a misunderstanding, not just a PR misstep, not just a celebrity feud that got out of hand, but rather something deeper, something structural, something that may shake loose truths that were never meant to see daylight. And that is precisely why Ryan's sudden shift into overdrive is so attention-grabbing, because this is not the behavior of someone who merely wants to protect his wife from embarrassment. This is the behavior of someone who sees a larger threat looming and is desperately trying to contain it before it spirals beyond his control. And to understand just how high the stakes have become, you have to look at the quiet tension developing around the people watching from the sidelines, people who know that once certain details become public, the ability to control the narrative will vanish completely, and at that point the story will take on a life of its own, shaping itself through public reaction, expert interpretation, court procedure, and cultural momentum. And once it reaches that stage, no amount of selective leaking, strategic silence, or public smiling will be able to put the pieces back where they once were. And this looming dread is exactly what fuels the speculation that everything happening right now is less about justice or truth and more about delay, deflection, and distraction, because if the strategy were strong and the evidence solid, there would be no need for panic, no need for frantic scrambling, no need to redirect attention onto peripheral issues. Instead, what we are seeing is the kind of maneuvering that suggests someone behind the scenes is running out of viable options. And with every hour that passes, the unpredictability grows further. Because the more desperate a team becomes, the more mistakes they make, and the more those mistakes expose the underlying fear that they may not be ready for what is coming next. And it is in that fear, in that scrambling, in that frantic energy, that the real story begins to reveal itself, not through official statements or carefully crafted posts, but through the cracks, through the inconsistencies, through the small details that were never meant to be noticed. And once you begin to see those cracks, you cannot unsee them. And the entire situation begins to look far more deliberate, calculated, and precarious than it did at first glance. And that is why this moment feels like the beginning of something much larger. Because the structure is wobbling, the alliances are shifting, and the quiet panic behind the scenes is no longer quiet at all. And as more insiders come forward and more connections reveal themselves, it becomes impossible to ignore the truth that this saga, whether Blake fully understands it or not, is rapidly evolving into a storm that will define reputations for years to come. As the fallout intensifies and the public leans in with morbid curiosity, the energy around this entire Hollywood implosion has shifted from simple scandal to full-blown crisis management, and the pressure weighing on Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds is becoming more visible by the day, especially as more insiders break ranks and leak what they know. The tone inside their once carefully curated circle has reportedly transformed from polished confidence to frantic damage control, because the truth is, the more this story grows, the harder it becomes for them to suppress the conversations swirling in entertainment boardrooms, PR war rooms, and private group chats all across Los Angeles and New York. And what makes this escalation particularly explosive is the sudden shift in alignment, as people who once stood firmly behind Blake and Ryan are now backing away, quietly wiping their hands clean, preparing themselves for the possibility that the couple's glossy public image may not survive the next round of disclosures. And when you trace how this unraveling started, it becomes clear that the cracks were always there, just waiting for the right trigger to burst open. Because Hollywood has a very predictable pattern: when power couples begin to lose control, insiders and allies start distancing themselves long before the public sees anything. And that is exactly what we are watching play out in real time, as managers, producers, and even old friends quietly remove themselves from the narrative, refusing to get caught in the crossfire of whatever is about to be revealed. And the whispers from sources close to legal teams suggest that the most incriminating part is not even the leaked communications or the alleged behind-the-scenes conflicts, but the sheer volume of inconsistencies that keep appearing every time Blake and Ryan attempt to explain away the situation. Because legal experts have already pointed out multiple contradictions between their public statements and what seems to be emerging through court procedures and private depositions, creating a tension that is now impossible to ignore. Which is why both fans and critics are asking the same urgent question: what exactly are Blake and Ryan trying to hide? And more importantly, why does it seem like every attempt to silence the narrative only makes it louder and more chaotic? And that chaos is feeding into the public frenzy, with commentators online catching every tiny shift in their behavior, from red carpet stiffness to sudden silence on social media. And the fact that neither has made any substantial clarifying statement has only fueled speculation that damaging information is sitting behind the scenes waiting to erupt. And when you add the rumors that certain unreleased messages may contain commentary that could embarrass not only them but other power players in Hollywood, the panic surrounding the couple starts to make perfect sense. Because if those communications ever see daylight, the ripple effects would not just hit Blake and Ryan, but could force massive PR restructuring for studios, agents, and brands connected to them. And Hollywood absolutely hates unpredictability, but that is exactly what the situation has become: uncontrollable, unpredictable, and deeply unstable. Which explains why crisis teams are reportedly being cycled in and out, crafting statements, preparing contingencies, and attempting to get ahead of narratives that they know may become uncontainable once public scrutiny intensifies during the next court cycle. And what makes the situation even more dramatic is the silence from people who usually rush to defend them. Individuals who were once vocal supporters are suddenly quiet, And insiders note that silence is not accidental, it is a deliberate strategy. The kind of strategic pause people take when they sense that a larger story is about to break, the kind that might expose everyone who spoke too soon or too confidently on the wrong side of the truth, and this silence has only added fuel to the wildfire of speculation, especially as online detectives and commentary channels start piecing together timelines, noting inconsistencies, identifying sudden shifts in professional relationships, pointing out gaps in public behavior, and asking why Blake and Ryan appear more defensive now than they were during earlier controversies. And the answer many insiders are giving off record is simple, because this time the situation is not just about public relations or image maintenance, it is about legal exposure, reputational risk, and the collapse of carefully constructed narratives that have been polished over years. And this collapse feels imminent because the more this story evolves, the less control Blake and Ryan seem to have over it, and it is telling that even their most dedicated fans are starting to voice confusion and concern, asking why people known for their charismatic public personas would allow a narrative this damaging to spiral unchecked, unless there was simply no safe way to address it without making things worse. And that question is spreading rapidly, creating a digital echo chamber where theories escalate faster than the couple can keep up, feeding into a cycle that is now completely beyond their PR reach. Because whenever a scandal shifts from controlled messaging to reactive damage control, the momentum becomes nearly impossible to reverse, and that is exactly where Blake and Ryan are right now, stuck in a downward spiral where every new revelation, every new rumor, every new analysis becomes another weight, dragging their public image deeper into turmoil. While insiders say the worst part has not even been exposed yet, and when you look at the patterns Hollywood has seen before in similar implosions, you start to notice the familiar beats. First comes denial, then deflection, then silence. Then the sudden shift in tone from allies, and we have now reached that exact phase where silence speaks louder than statements, where absence communicates more than words, and where people no longer want their names tied to a narrative that may end with court-mandated disclosures that no PR team can clean up. And what truly heightens the suspense is the mounting fear from individuals allegedly mentioned in the unreleased messages, who reportedly want nothing to do with this disaster and are quietly preparing to distance themselves at the first sign of public release, because their reputations might also be at stake if any of the rumored commentary tied to them becomes accessible to the public. And this interconnected web of secrecy, panic, distancing, and damage control has created a perfect storm that the public cannot look away from. And why would they? The intrigue, the betrayal, the contradictions, the unraveling of a celebrity image once thought unshakable, all of it creates the kind of real-time Hollywood drama that audiences devour and commentators break down in detail. And through it all, the question remains, how much longer can Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds keep the dam from breaking? Because once the messages become public, once the court filings are unsealed, once the truth finally steps out from behind legal redactions, the story will shift from speculation to fact. And facts are far harder to deny, ignore, or spin, and that is the moment, insiders say, will determine the future of their image, their careers, and their place in Hollywood's power structure, a future that now hangs in a precarious balance, teetering between the remnants of their golden couple reputation and the devastating possibility that everything could collapse the moment the next leak hits the internet. And when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, it becomes obvious that this story is nowhere near finished, because the pressure, the silence, the panic, and the unanswered questions are all pointing to one thing: the real bombshell hasn't even dropped yet. So stay alert, because the moment those sealed messages surface, everything we thought we knew about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds could flip overnight, and the fallout will shake Hollywood in a way no one is prepared for.